Hello and welcome back, finally, to Empiresophistorypodcast The Ottomans, formerly Empires of History Podcast The Ottoman Series. I am Frank Schumpert, your host, and thank you for stopping by. Are you guys tired of waiting around for Ottoman Empire episodes? Ever curious about the times, political, and diplomatic context of American presidents? Well, Jerry Landry takes a systemic approach to the events and people using primary and excellent secondary source material. I'm listening to episode 39, Election Engineering, and oh boy, does Jerry do a great job of tying British envoy George Rose, the Jefferson administration, Napoleon, and the Embargo Act together in a seamless narrative based on awesome source material. I can't wait. So head on over and check the show out. Link is in the show notes. Leaving a review for Empire's podcast, The Ottomans, is always appreciated. And moving forward from now on, any new reviews on Apple Podcasts or emails that you want read out, I promise to read aloud during the show. However, if I had to choose the best way you can support the show, it would be by sharing this podcast with someone who you think would enjoy learning about the Ottomans. And now, without any further ado, Episode 14, Sultan Mehmed I, the Restorer and Post-Interregnum Headache. When we last left off, much to my great embarrassment and shame, back in June of 2019, things were looking a bit shaky for the Ottomans after the Civil War, which, if you go and listen to episode 13, you'll realize it wasn't one huge campaign, but a series of smallish skirmishes, culminating in the final showdown in a battle just outside the city of Sofia, with Mehmed being the victor. I'm not trying to retread old ground here, but in painting a picture of the geo-economic and military time bomb the new sultan found himself holding in 1413, it is necessary to go over briefly the absolute disaster the late Sultan Bayezid the Thunderbolt had left the Ottoman state in. Had the defeat at the Battle of Ankara happened to a leader like Murad or Orhan, I'm pretty sure the Ottoman state would have bounced back a swinging and fighting just fine. However, upon his ascension in 1389, Sultan Bayezid, as you'll recall in previous episodes, ran roughshod over decades-old alliances, decimated intelligence networks, with his absolute refusal to reconcile, pay bribes, or offer the surface-level homage to venerable old lords and princes, who were unaccustomed to being treated as inferiors to an Ottoman sovereign. Bayezid preferred the sword in every situation, and when that situation absolutely in no way, shape, or form required the sword, such as his blood meridian-style swath of destruction through Anatolia, Bayezid made sure the other party was so aggrieved and insulted that a fight was all but assured. His fourth son, and now supreme ruler of the Ottoman Empire, well, not really. As it turns out, another brother is about to make a claim against the throne, but all that in a later episode. Anyways, his son Mehmed I would reap the terrible consequences of his father's actions in four primary ways immediately after the Ottoman civil wars, two of them external, the others internal. The first external was the empire's growing list of enemies. We can start with the Europeans first. After the disastrous Crusade of Nicopolis, Hungary, the various Italian city-states, Germanic states, and the Pope had lost steam in fighting the Ottomans directly in a head-on battle. However, that left a small kingdom that I haven't really had the chance to mention too much before, Wallachia, to start taking the Ottoman threat very seriously at this point. Wallachia, now part of modern-day Romania, sits on the lower Danube, south of the southern Carpathians, traditionally divided up into two regions, Muntina, also known as Greater Wallachia, and Oltina, Lesser Wallachia. As a footnote, when I was researching this episode, I couldn't help but notice that Wallachia appears in Italian artwork and map-making listed as Mantua. Founded as a province by the Kingdom of Hungary sometime in the 13th century, a rebellion against Charles I gained the region somewhat nominal autonomy, as powerful local rulers, known as voivodes and self-styled princes, rose up within Wallachia, all with their own independent power bases. One such leader was Prince Mehmed. The prince, and by extension Wallachia as a whole, or at least Greater Wallachia, was drawn into the Ottoman Civil War period. Taking a cue from the Emperor of the Byzantines, Mehmed shrewdly backed the weakest of each of the Ottoman brothers vying for the throne. One such claimant, an enemy of the then Prince Mehmed, Musa sailed from Anatolia and into the mouth of the Danube, where he married a daughter of Mehmed, thereby entangling Wallachian and Ottoman interests moving forward. As the joint Byzantine, Wallachian, and later Venetian strategy of, "Hey guys, let's see how much we can prolong this internal civil war thing the Ottomans have going," melted away in the face of Mehmed's victories, a new posture would have to be adopted to stop future Ottoman aggression. Thus, in 1413, Sultan Mehmed faced a united force of Wallachia, Venice, and to a lesser extent Byzantine military bloc, hemming in the empire from the north and its flanks along the southern coastline. Although nothing like a formal military alliance that we'd understand today, there seemed to be some horse trading in the marriage departments of the Eastern European monarchs, princes, dukes, voivodes, and local lords, tying each other by blood, treasure, and marriage against the threat of an Ottoman attack. The simple truth for the Ottomans in 1413 was that they no longer ruled over a united empire, like they had once done under Bayezid. Bulgaria, although not fully independent, had shaken off most of Ottoman control. Northern Serbia had broken free of the Ottoman yoke, and Albania had all but driven the administration completely out, leaving but a few outposts here and there. This situation would open up the opportunity for foreign powers to meddle in the internal affairs of Albania, Serbia, and Bulgaria. As such, the frontiers were no longer secured, and the Ottoman provinces were beginning to pull away in Thrace and Macedonia. The situation being thus, Mehmed knew that if he turned the bulk of his half-mercenary, half-dubious loyal army to Anatolia to tame the problems in that part of the empire, there was a good chance of Wallachia preemptively invading and sacking Ottoman towns, or even of the Albanians and Serbians asserting further independence from central Ottoman control, if not throwing them out altogether. And speaking of Anatolia, this brings us to the second external threat faced by Mehmed. The longtime regional power competitor, the state of Karamanid, once crushed by Bayezid, had not only asserted its independence once again in the face of an internally divided empire, but had sent out agents, treasure, aid, and small units of fast-moving horse-mounted archers to encourage, harry, threaten, bribe, and force the surrounding local beyliks, provinces, and vassals to shake off Ottoman control. This, coupled with the fact that the Karamanids hadn't done this all on their own, but instead had made themselves the willing vassal of the Mamluks, who were now pushing into the eastern portions of Asia Minor. As if the Karamanids weren't enough of an existential threat, remember that hated boogeyman of Ottoman recent memory, Timur or Tamerlane? Well, even though he died in 1405, he left behind a still formidable empire, ruled by his son Shahrukh, that was a substantial threat to the Ottoman eastern flank. To make matters worse, diplomatic correspondence hummed between the successor of Timur and the courts of Wallachia, the Pope, Venice, and the Byzantines, all of whom were buzzing with talk about the Europeans paying outrageous amounts of gold and treasure to tempt the Timurs into finishing the Ottomans off for good in Anatolia. The Byzantines in particular had a mind to hosting and protecting behind the Theodosian walls any distant cousin, illegitimate son, or castaway brother of the Ottoman family. After all, even though Mehmed had been triumphant in the Civil War, his brothers had sons, and in future generations, Those sons would have sons and so forth, a veritable dynastic nightmare, all in an attempt at fomenting the festering infection that was the legacy of the civil wars and undermining Sultan Mehmed II's claim upon the throne. With the regional great powers smelling blood in the water and the memory of the ruthless and pitiless Bayezid still fresh in the minds of Europeans and Anatolians alike, Mehmed seriously worried his ragtag army was up to defending the empire from just one of these foes, let alone a nightmare scenario in which all major players teamed up against the empire. An earlier Ottoman state may have been able to stare into the face of such daunting odds without blinking. However, the Ottoman Empire in 1413 was faced with two major internal problems that seriously degraded any united military response to outside threats. And this leads us to the third issue facing Mehmed, the simple fact that the economy of the Ottoman Empire was devastated. Local crops were gobbled up by hungry troops, and the small morsels not devoured were ruthlessly taxed by corrupt officials, or out-and-out stolen by bandits, who also frequently happened to be the same soldiers, archers, and horsemen, ostensibly in the service of the local lords, or whomever was claiming to be sultan at the time. This situation forced many poverty-stricken small and medium-sized farming families, both Christian and Muslim alike, into such extremes as selling their daughters into the harems of the rich and powerful, and dooming their sons to a lifetime of servitude and forced labor. This created an influx of refugees from the countryside, and in turn strained the Islamic charity systems across the major urban centers of the empire, and in many places broke down altogether. This meant a huge tax loss in revenue for the Ottoman state, as local lords bought, loaned, or stole huge tracts of land to enrich themselves and to pay off corrupt local officials. The treasury of the Ottoman state was getting low, and without money, the government wouldn't be able to pay its troops. And we all know what happens to angry bands of soldiers who haven't been paid. The economic instability and rampant poverty led to the fourth and perhaps most lasting effect for the empire, especially in Anatolia. The civil wars and collapse of the economy contributed to a kind of cloak and dagger political situation for the top appointed officials of the empire. With each ascension, then dramatic fall of each successive son, officials came and went in the provinces, towns, and villages. This meant that each new official showing up had next to no expertise in the area under his responsibility, and he might even be facing the real threat of assassination from the previous official just thrown out of office, lurking somewhere in the shadows. This situation caused the local level administration to either become strained, terribly inefficient, outright corrupt, or, in most cases, completely useless. The army wasn't getting their food rations, weapons, armor, animals, or engines of war. The tents were now tattered in the Sultan's camp because the wool supply had broken down, and the taxes, what little could be sheared, wasn't being collected. This logistical problem, if not addressed, threatened the stability of numerous outposts along the troubled border with Hungary and Wallachia, and also internally at various mountain passes, toll houses, and the like. All across the empire, the judicial system itself had ground to a stop, and the regular, what we'd call civil service personnel, probably stared wide-eyed at each other in an atmosphere of indecision, fear, and dread of who or what would appear over the horizon in the near future. As we will see moving forward through the next episodes as we cover the reigns of Murad II and finally the conqueror himself, Mehmed II, the repercussions of Bayezid's careless wars and final defeat would reverberate throughout the decades, and the Ottomans wouldn't finally get over the civil war until the victory at Constantinople in 1453. So you might say, well, Mehmed, congrats on gaining the throne. Now, go have fun, okay? Had it been a lesser man, I'm sure the Ottoman Empire's story may very well have been concluded sometime between 1416 and 1419, a footnote in the history books of some other regional empire. But, as we are to observe through the next episodes, there will be a growing trend of near-death experiences in which the Ottomans always seem to produce the right man with the right set of qualifications at the right time and place to pull the empire back from the brink of total oblivion. But, despite these challenges, as we will come to see, Mehmed would prove to everyone that he was more than a match to the challenges ahead. As his personal and political greatest foe to come, the Sheikh Bedreddin, would soon come to learn. But more on Sheikh Bedreddin and his quasi-let's-eat-the-rich rebellion later. For now, at this point, is where I thank you, dear listeners, for deciding to tune in. I know that it's been a while, and I'd like to say how excited I am to be talking about and reading about the Ottomans. Please forgive me as I'm still getting back into the swing of things. But I really hope to have an episode out every other 2 weeks. If I think there might be a delay, I promise to put out a news episode from time to time. With that being said, I'd like to read out from my analytics the countries where Empire's podcast, The Ottomans, has reached so far: the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Switzerland, Turkey, and oh hey, hello Turks, I'd love to hear from you. Bahrain, Canada, Egypt, Philippines, and France. I'd like to thank everyone from these places for your support, and I invite each and every one of you to head over if you like this podcast and leave a review, but especially share this with a friend. Thank you, and I look forward to next time.